Week one is one of the most important times in all of fantasy football to figure out what matters, what doesn't matter. We are going to go through a bunch of buy lows, sell highs, backfield usage adjustments, the Tank Bigsby trade for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we're going to figure out basically what mattered in fantasy football over the last week and what is going to matter moving forward. And the first place that we are going to begin is with the Seattle Seahawks backfield, because there was huge changes here. Charbonnet played way more often in multiple situations compared to last season, led the team in carries, rushing yards, and touchdowns. You guys can see from this graphic, way more 2-minute drill, all of the goal line stuff. Now, Ken Walker is going to remain the early down back. And as my friend Jacob Sanderson pointed out in some of his analysis, one of the things that's a little bit overstated is that goal line carry. It basically just so happened that Zach Charbonnet was on the field at the stage in which the Seahawks had a goal line carry to do. Sharps gained at least 5 yards on 50% of his carries compared to a 20% rate by Walker, as we can see in his PFF grade. Ken Walker basically just did not play very well. 62.5 offensive grade. Funnily enough, though, and this just goes to show it's always something that you can always find something. This was one of the better receiving games that he's had. He had 3 receptions in this game. Charbonnet had no receiving work in this game, and that is basically as a direct result of the way that the offense was, because we saw Charbonnet out there on the third downs. Next up, we have Tank Bigsby being traded away from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Philadelphia Eagles. This one of absolute utmost interest to fantasy football players because, well, really for several reasons. The first being we all love Byshell Tuten. Byshell Tuten is in what we imagine to be the Bucky Irving role for this team, and that is the role that I think Byshell Tuten is going to play. Now, Travis Etienne Jr. was awesome in week one. I don't think there's any point in pretending that Travis Etienne was not very good for the Jaguars, but the issue with Travis Etienne has very rarely been his week one performance. Quite often, we have seen Etienne kind of have his best games early on in the season. He's going to force more missed tackles early in the season. He's going to have his longest rushes earlier in the season. And the Carolina Panthers, not a difficult matchup at all. Looking at the usage, I think it's pretty clear that there was basically just no role there for Bigsby. Bigsby is an early down running back who has no upside in the passing game at all. Tuten is also an early down running back, but he's got loads of upside in the passing game. Etienne, a decent pass catcher, but Tuten is just obviously the more explosive player. Now, a little bit of a wrinkle in this ointment is going to be the fact that LaQuint Allen is also a pretty good passing down back. LaQuint Allen, I think, is probably going to remain one of the passing down backs for this team. He is going to get some third downs. I mean, you saw he got 8 third downs. Tank Bigsby got 1. Etienne got 1. But Tuten is the running back that we want in this backfield moving forward. Etienne is definitely going to be a short-term fantasy starter. I think Etienne is a weekly starter, but Byshell Tuten is a premium handcuff, and I am totally fine. If Tuten got dropped in your league, I think you should spend a bunch of fab dollars trying to acquire him. Now, something we're going to be doing a little bit here is buying high, and I think that you guys need to be very comfortable doing that. Dynasty, DFS, 12-team redraft, whatever. If you have the ability to get more Puka Nacua, I absolutely think that you need to be able to do so. He was basically one of the best players in fantasy football in week one. He really did not play a ton in week one. The guy kept coming off the field. He earned 11 targets. He caught 10 of them on only 23 routes. I mean, isn't that insane? He was able to do that on only 23 routes. He played 65% of his snaps out of the slot. As of right now, this is actually true. Puka Nacua is the current NFL leader in targets per route run and yards per route run. He generated 5.91 yards per route run. Now, does that mean that like Devontae Adams, who actually did have the more difficult defensive matchup against Houston, I thought that was an interesting thing that Houston did. They focused more of their coverage on Devontae Adams. They put their best cornerback on Devontae Adams. I mean, I think that seems like a little bit misguided, but he is a true alpha. If I was doing rest of season rankings, which I will over on patreon.com/DavisMattek, I would be tempted to potentially rank Puka Nacua as the overall wide receiver 1 going forward. The role is so good. The talent is so good. Sadly, I don't think we have the ability to turn injuries off for Puka Nacua, which is, that is a big bummer, right? The guy seems to get injured every single game. The guy had a bloody eye. Then the referee had him go get checked out for concussion symptoms again. but I'd be willing to send out quite a few offers for Puka Nacua in all kinds of formats. And then moving forward in DFS and then in battle royales over on Underdog, I think we need to consider him a CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level talent. Speaking of Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals, that's one thing I want to tell you guys to do. Do not panic on the Cincinnati Bengals. First off, they sort of always start the year very slow. They gained 7 yards in the second half against the Cleveland Browns. That is the fewest yards gained in a half of a football game in this entire decade. Do I think Joe Burrow is bad? I don't. Do I think that Jamar Chase is bad? I do not. Do I think that T. Higgins is bad? Well, honestly, kind of I do, but that is more of a personal thing than anything that is representative of being true. If there's any ability to buy low on any of these players, I certainly think you should. I know that in week 3, they are part of the highest total game there, that Cincinnati-Jacksonville game. I certainly think it's a great spot to buy low. In terms of actionable things you can do in redraft, I mean, I would just say don't sit any of them. T. Higgins might be a guy that you start to float out in trades, especially particularly because T. Higgins could bust in this game against the Jaguars. I mean, that is just something that happens with these volatile wide receiver 2 types. It'll be very similar. The same thing that we are going to see likely from George Pickens. You know, George Pickens at the end of the year is going to have 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, but there might be a month period where he just looks like a guy that you cannot start in fantasy football at all. I would also include, if we're talking about guys to, not panic about in week 1, I would say even more so than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I actually would probably go ahead and put A.J. Brown on that list as well. A pretty difficult defensive matchup for A.J. Brown in terms of what they were doing, focusing on him. He only earned 1 target. He was reading inner excellence over there on the sideline. He also is coming back from a hamstring injury. I know that our friends over at Fantasy Points Data, that's that tab that I was just on, had them with a 0% win rate on any of his routes. A 0% win rate's not very good, but remember, our boy A.J. Brown was coming back from a hamstring injury that he suffered in the preseason. He's now had 10 days off before this game against Kansas City, and maybe he doesn't even have a great game against Kansas City. I'm looking at DFS contests, I'm looking at Underdog Battle Royale contests, and I'm going, okay, well, I'm actually not at all worried about A.J. Brown. I want to be on the buy side quite clearly of A.J. Brown. Hamstring injury, schmamstring injury. The Eagles are not going to be able to get to their absolute ceiling without him. And if they're not able to get to their absolute ceiling without him, then I feel quite good. That you need to know, and this is in every format. You should add him in your redraft leagues. You should trade for him in Dynasty. You should be playing him in DFS. This is a very, very important thing to note. Harold Fannin Jr., that's my single biggest buy of the week. This is him compared over on Fantasy Life to David Njoku. Yes, his route share was a little bit lower than Njoku's, but his target per route run, one of the best in the entire league after week 1, 29% targets per route run. He had a 6.3 ADOT. He had 25% of the Cleveland Browns air yards. He was absolutely phenomenal in this game, and he is going to continue to have even better games moving forward. If you don't know anything about Harold Fannin Jr., he was the most productive tight end in the history of college football at Bowling Green State University. He does wear 44, which I admit is a little bit of an eyesore to look out. And I'm not like dropping David Njoku. I don't think that David Njoku's fantasy football season is over. In fact, I actually sort of think that the Cleveland Browns passing game is going to be one of the more interesting ones in the entirety of football. Look at how many dropbacks this team had. 50 dropbacks, 51 routes for Jerry Jeudy, 50 for Cedric Tillman. Just like unbelievably good for all these guys in fantasy football. Bunch of routes for Dylan Sampson, a bunch of routes for Jerome Ford. Dylan Sampson was one of the most interesting ones. In fact, we should actually talk about buying on Dylan Sampson, selling on Jerome Ford right now. Dylan Sampson was the SEC College Football Player of the Year. Pretty impressive, right? I mean, actually probably more impressive than what we saw Quinshon Judkins do at Ole Miss. Dylan Sampson is probably too small to hold up for the entirety of an NFL season. I mean, I'm a small guy. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but he had 278 touches, 1,600 yards, and 22 touchdowns. He went 8 targets, 8 receptions for the Cleveland Browns in week 1. Quinshon Judkins reportedly might be back for week 2 against the Ravens. I have my doubts there. Sampson, one of the best guys, I think, to target in all of fantasy football right now, because there are going to be people out there who are big Judkins guys. they think Judkins is going to come back and not just be an early down grinder. That is definitely my guess. I think that Quinshon Judkins is going to return and be the primary early down rusher. But Dylan Sampson, we already have actionable evidence that he is a good pass catcher in the NFL. Going 8 for 8 in your first game is definitely not nothing. So I'm buying on Dylan Sampson as well. Consider this your last opportunity to buy on Jalen Royals, who is now a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. 48 dropbacks for Patrick Mahomes in their season opening game against the Chargers. Xavier Worthy, probably out for the year. I mean, right now the Chiefs are saying he isn't. He has a dislocated shoulder. Maybe he'll be out, for 3 weeks. Maybe he'll be out for 4 weeks. I'm not really anticipating seeing him. 16 targets for Hollywood Brown, a 10% target share for Travis Kelce. That is his lowest target share in a single football game since the 2022 season. Tyquan Thornton, I mean, look, God bless him. He was out there. He played 67% of his snaps out wide. He had an unbelievable 27.3 ADOT, a 5.8 ADOT for Juju Smith-Schuster on 40 routes. Those Juju Smith-Schuster routes, those are going to Jalen Royals, who did not play in week 1 with a lower body injury. I think he's going to be back in week 2. If there's any of these players who has the ability to elevate and change the Kansas City Chiefs offense while they wait for Rashee Rice to stop being suspended and for Xavier Worthy to heal up, there's one guy who it is, and that guy is Jalen Royals, who the team has referred to as a Rashee Rice clone. Now, do I believe them in terms of being a Rashee Rice clone? I mean, honestly, I probably don't, but he's the cheapest guy available right now, and he's the one who has any individual bit of upside. So I think that he is the number one stash, the number one guy you can get for $1 or $0 in your fantasy league right now. And if and when we get the information that he is starting this week, I think he is a super interesting deep sleeper in fantasy football. We need to move on now to raising Breece Hall way up in our expectations. Yes, it is definitely true that Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen played a little bit more than we thought. We saw some third downs for Isaiah Davis. We saw a goal line rush for Braylon Allen, and that stuff is going to happen. 23 snaps only for, 23 snaps in the rushing game for Breece Hall. But in general, he played more than you thought. He played 37 snaps. He only ran 8 passing routes. He pass blocked 6 times, so he was not as involved. But in terms of what he did as a receiver, I mean, it's exactly what you'd expect. His targets per route run is going to be insane. When Breece Hall is on the field for a passing play, he's on the field to get the ball, which we are totally fine with. And I think there was this idea in fantasy football, 1, that Breece is not very good anymore, and that 2, well, the Jets are just not going to be good, but their offensive line was elite in week 1. I think that is a really important thing to note as it pertains to Breece Hall. But Breece Hall is just very, very good. And being very good is a big part of what we're trying to do in fantasy football. Where do outliers come from? Outliers come from being very good. I think one of the biggest adjustments to make in all of fantasy football is realizing that Tyler Warren is now the most important part of the Indianapolis Colts offense and not Josh Downs. A 30% first read target share for Tyler Warren. That is the same as Michael Pittman Jr. Josh Downs all the way down to 10%. If we go back and look at 2024 for the Indianapolis Colts, the first read target share all the way up at 30% for Josh Downs. I mean, I can't see anything that is more clear that Tyler Warren has taken over Josh Downs's place in the offense than that. On those RPOs, if you think about the way an RPO works, quarterbacks don't have time to read and react and then get to the second or third read on those plays, because then the offensive linemen who are blocking for a running play then become an ineligible man down the field. So those RPO plays, they got to be quick. And the quick read on those plays is not Josh Downs anymore. It is going to be Tyler Warren. So I am mentally downgrading Josh Downs in fantasy football quite a bit and really upgrading Tyler Warren. I'm holding firm on Amarian Hampton, who played way more than you would think. He played 52 total snaps on offense. He was on the field for 26 passing plays, did a little bit of pass blocking as well. His rushing stats, really bad from week 1. 3.2 yards per carry, 2.6 yards after contact per attempt, only 3 missed tackles, 11 yards for his long run. All that stuff is easily explained by playing a tough Kansas City Chiefs defense. A lot of guys are going to struggle against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this week we might see Saquon Barkley struggle a little bit against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that's no harm, no foul. He was on the field a ton. Being on the field a ton is like basically half the battle. Najee Harris was not involved at all. In fact, Hassan Haskins came in that game before Najee Harris did. Hampton, a first-round pick in the NFL draft. I think he is just like one of the clearest buys or holds in all of fantasy football. I expect the Chargers offense to be good, and being in a positive PROE offense the way that the Chargers were in week 1 is actually quite good for Amari and Hampton because it's going to set up more scoring opportunities. Next up, boy, this one is actually going to bring me a lot of joy. If you can get anything for Javonte Williams, if you can sell Javonte Williams, I think that you have to be happy to do it. He did get 15 rushes, 3.6 yards per carry, did have a nice PFF rush grade, did score the 2 touchdowns, but only 11 yards for his longest run, 2.13 yards after contact. Basically, he had that one really nice 11-yard run up the gut where he broke some tackles. And I think that that was, a good veteran performance. Do I think Javonte Williams is going to get benched? Absolutely not. I don't think Javonte Williams is going to get benched. I also don't think that this player from 2021, where he generated a 75.9 PFF grade, 4 rushing touchdowns, 3.42 yards after contact average, I just don't think this player exists anymore. If you look at how poor his missed tackles force been, by the way, 0 missed tackles force for Javonte Williams against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that stuff basically is what it is. And at any game that Javonte Williams scores a touchdown, he'll be fine. I think Jaden Blue is coming sooner rather than later, which again is fine. I think that there is this tendency to think that I'm sort of being sour grapes about Javonte. This performance from Javonte Williams against the Eagles was not all that surprising to me. He always could score a touchdown. I mean, he had a game this good against the New Orleans Saints last year. And if you have a good game against the New Orleans Saints, shout out to you, Javonte Williams. But I'm not buying on him in week 2. I'm not buying on him in week 3. My expectation for the Cowboys backfield moving forward is that Miles Sanders is eventually going to get cut. Maybe they make him the healthy scratch. Jaden Blue is going to get activated. Javonte Williams is going to get a bunch of trap attempts, which are those early down rushes that don't generate a ton of fantasy points. And our boy, Jaden Blue, is going to end up with, the more valuable receiving work. And maybe I'll be wrong, but that is my opinion. Our final big point here, and this is a huge contextualized one that we need to do for the rest of the season. Christian McCaffrey is the most valuable player in fantasy football. We were drafting again today. He's the 101. He had the scary calf injury on Thursday. I'm not worried about Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey played bad, right? He played bad against the Seattle Seahawks. He had 10 targets in that game, only a 59.9 offensive grade, very bad pass blocking grade. He was good as a receiver, not very good as a rusher. I mean, I think the Seattle Seahawks defense is going to be very good, so I don't think we can be mad at him about that one, but he generated 2.05 yards after contact average, 2 missed tackles, only along a 13. I mean, his stats look like Javonte Williams stats. So Davis, are you a dumb hypocrite? Are you lying to me? I'm not. I promise you. I'm not lying to you. It's just that this guy gets afforded so many opportunities at every level of the field. His expected points go absolutely nuclear insane. And for DFS, for season long, for Dynasty League, if I was going to send out an offer in a team in a Dynasty League that I was trying to win right now, I mean, I would just want Christian McCaffrey because he's already got through his first injury scare with the calf injury. So I think we can feel very good about where Christian McCaffrey sits in fantasy football. I don't think there's much of a reason to be concerned about him while he's on the field. This is something that obviously intuitively we should have known, but I think it is very evident now that when Christian McCaffrey is on the field, he is the number 1 player in fantasy football. So if you just want the TLDR here, we're moving Charbonnet up in our rankings. We're moving Harold Fannin Jr. up in our rankings. Jalen Royals is an awesome stash. We're buying high on Puka Nacua, selling a little bit on Ken Walker. I do think that the roles in that Seattle backfield have changed. Not concerned at all about A.J. Brown, the Bengals wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, all cool. Amari and Hampton is a clear buy or hold. Selling high on Javonte Williams. We think that Byshell Tootin is the premium handcuff to have in the Jacksonville Jaguars backfield. Breece Hall, way up. I think we should adjust our expectations way up. And Christian McCaffrey is the clear 101 in fantasy football right now. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for daily fantasy football videos. And I will see you guys all back tomorrow.